Okay, you guys, I'm going to start this live a little bit early because I kind of just want to get it out the way today. So, I was thinking about making this live because um, I was asked a question yesterday and also in the chat. A lot of the men were talking about, well, let me start with the question. The question was like when a man gets like around 50, if he wants offspring, like what is he to do then, right? If he can't or should not, or it's inappropriate to mate with a woman, that's young enough to be his daughter. And I was talking about sperm morphology and the quality of sperm that men have as they age. And I saw a lot of men in the chat that were like, I can get a woman pregnant until I'm 80 and like all this stuff. And I thought that this was really interesting because we know that for women, their reproductive years are clearly defined because women go through menopause. And after a woman goes through menopause, even though it has been known for, and I'm just going to say this because for a man to say, well, I can get a woman pregnant into my 80s is like for me to say, because there are some women, I don't know if you guys know this, but there are some women who have given birth at like 67, 69, right? There are women who have given birth in their late 50s, in their late 60s, but most women aren't going to give birth without assistance, natural birth in their 50s and 60s. But the reality is there are many women on the planet who have, right? I think the oldest lady to ever give natural birth, like without help of a doctor, was like 68 or 69. She was in Asia. It was like an old lady. But I'm not going to use that old lady as evidence that I can reproduce at 69 years old, am I? In the same way, I think men have kind of been sold a dream. They're always telling women about our reproductive years, and then they function and are being sold a dream by YouTube that their reproductive years just go on forever. And the reality is that is really not true. In fact, their reproductive years start to decline around 35, and about by 40, they are half as fertile. And it just goes downhill every single year from there. Not only are they less fertile, but their sperm is extremely deformed and actually creates subpar children much of the time. And so I want to talk about that because men are always, encouraging women to, have babies before they hit the wall, have babies before their eggs get old. And so I want to really, talk to men, especially young men who have these older men lying to them, right? And, help them to better understand their own reproductive windows. Because it does take two to reproduce. And even when a man finds a young woman, because their sperm is so degraded as they age, having a young wife really isn't that helpful. And I'm about to show a lot of research on male reproduction that shows us how detrimental it really is to reproduce with aged and DNA compromised and mutated sperm, which is a high concentration of the sperm that you find in older men. So, with that said, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we're just going to talk about male reproduction. Okay. So, I'm going to do a few rapid fire, kind of like yesterday, a couple of rapid fire, um, just kind of clips to demonstrate what I'm talking about, and then I'm going to go into the actual studies. So, these are the points that I aim to prove in this live. Number one, that men do have a reproductive window. Number two, While there are a few men that can give birth or impregnate a woman at an old age, most men have a great deal of difficulty impregnating a woman in comparison to a young man. Number three, sperm quality is greatly degraded after a man passes the age of 40. Number four, that low quality sperm is responsible for some really disturbing birth defects. It causes miscarriage in the mother and health effects to the pregnant woman, as well as puts the baby in danger. Children born to older fathers have everything from lower IQs to rare diseases. And so we want to talk about that. And number five, that just as women are wise to reproduce young, men would be wise to reproduce young. And that it is a lie and a dream that a lot of men are sold that they are just as good at making babies when they're old as they are when they are young. The research shows that that is simply not true. In fact, 40 to 50% of all infertility between couples is because of the man's sperm being poor quality. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the research. So we're going to do, like I said, some rapid fire where I just go over some real quick facts, and then we're going to get into the actual research itself, which is really concerning, you guys. And I think as women too, if you're wanting to reproduce, right, if you want children, you should be thinking about who's going to, obviously, who you love, but also the risks that come with producing with a man that is aged. And just like as women, we have to think about the risks of producing a child when we are aged. We need to think about, not me, because I already have my babies, but if you are still wanting to create reproduction, you need, or if you're still wanting to reproduce, you need to really consider the sperm quality of your partner and how that could affect you and your offspring. Okay, so research shows that sperm counts have dropped by half in the last 50 years or so, and that a higher percentage are poor swimmers, slow, ungainly, or beset by genetic flaws. So, the first thing that we need to realize when we're talking about sperm quality is all men on the whole, all men on the whole have had a sperm count decrease of about 50% on average. So even the youngest of men is starting with a degraded sperm stock. We're not even getting to the old people yet, right? The older men yet. We're just talking about just a fresh young man. His sperm count on average is already degraded by 50% from where men used to be. Their sperm quality is lower in count and concentration. A lot of the sperm cannot swim correctly. They are slow, and you need fast sperm to reach an egg. They are ungainly, and they have a lot of genetic flaws. We're going to go into some of these genetic flaws and how that can affect your chances of getting pregnant and also offspring. Okay, let's go to the next thing. Remember, these are just our rapid fire before we get to the actual research. Just a few quick things in the beginning. Results show that exposure to chemicals at levels found in the environment reduce sperm motility, meaning it reduces sperm's ability to swim, and fragmented DNA carried in the head of the sperm. So, environmental factors, they lessen the quality of men's sperm. This means that logically, the older a man is, the longer he has been exposed to chemicals in his environment, the slower his sperm will swim, right? And the more damage is going to be caused to the DNA that his sperm carries. All men have this problem, but obviously, the longer you've been alive, the more chemicals in the environment you're exposed to, the lower the quality of the sperm, the more damaged the DNA in your sperm is going to be as those toxins accumulate in your body. Let's take a look at the next rapid fire. 20 to 30% of young men today have sperm counts that in a range that is associated with reduced fertility. Listen to what I'm saying. Not only overall do men have sperm that is degraded by about 50% in comparison to men from different generations, but on top of that, 20 to 30% of young men have sperm counts that have a range that is clinically considered to be reduced in fertility. That's the young men. That's not even after they've gotten older and their sperm quality has degraded even further. So, a good percentage of men are starting out with low sperm counts and sperm that is not quite functioning as it should. Imagine that 20 to 30% of men then waiting to get old to have babies, knowing that after the age of 40, their sperm becomes even more degraded. So you have to really think as a man, right? If you're already working with 50% lower volume in sperm, poor quality sperm on average in comparison to men of generations, many generations before us, right? Then you also have to think about, then do I fall into that 20 to 30%? A lot of young men go and they have their sperm tested and are very shocked to find out that they actually have fertility problems. Then those men, if they wait until they're 40, 50 to have children, have now compounded a problem because their low quality sperm is now even of a lower quality because they are older. This is something that's not talked about. Men, because they make sperm all the time, I think a lot of men equate simply making sperm with that sperm having value. And all sperm is not created equal, right? All sperm is not created equal. All sperm is not equally valuable when it comes to fertilizing an egg. Let's look at some of these mutations, okay? So it's important to note that sperm morphology, meaning the shape that the sperm is, determine how well sperm can fertilize an egg. Normal shaped sperm is more likely to fertilize an egg, in contrast to abnormal shaped sperm. Sperm morphology causes infertility in men. It is one of the causes. Now, as you get older as a man, the more weird your sperm starts to look. You can have good sperm or you can have all these abnormal types of sperm, right? As your sperm gets old, as you get older, your sperm doesn't get older, but the parts of your let's take a look at the parts or the different types of sperm that men produce as they get older that is abnormal. So, some common things that we see in men whose sperm is abnormal because of advanced age is the top of the head of the sperm is too big, or it's too small, or it's oddly shaped like this. It kind of looks weird, it's degraded. The body, which is this part right here, becomes rough, right? Often, and this is a really common one, the sperm will have two tails, which obviously make it very difficult for it to swim if those tails are smacking against each other, or the sperm will have two heads. Honestly, this is kind of creepy when you think about this like being in your body, but this is all of, these are some of the common things that we see when older men produce sperm. We see a lot of this kind of, you know, abnormal looking sperm. Most of these sperms are going to have a hard time fertilizing an egg. We're going to talk about what happens if some of these sperm do fertilize an egg, because sometimes they do fertilize an egg, but the results can be, pretty depressing when an abnormal sperm fertilizes an egg. I want to look at the parts of the sperm that can end up as you age, that can end up actually becoming malformed. Just specifically speaking of sperm morphology, this is not even talking about the DNA quality of the sperm, right? Because there's two things. There's sperm morphology, which is what does the sperm look like? Is the sperm going to be efficient at getting to the egg? And then there's DNA, the quality of the DNA, the genetic material of the sperm. These are two different things that affect not only fertility, but the quality of the child, right? And I hate to put it in those terms, but it's true, the quality of the child. Younger men have a higher likelihood of producing a healthier child. Younger men have a higher quantity of healthy sperm. So when we look at sperm defects, there can be defects in the head. There can be defects in the midsection of the sperm, the little part of the sperm that is directly under the head before you reach the tail. There can also be defects in the tail. The tail can be bent. It can be too long. It can be misshapen or too short. And then there can be a cromless, which is interesting. We're going to be talking about that a little bit later. Now, when we compare the likelihood of an older man's sperm and a younger man's sperm reaching the egg, which I think is a whole nother question, I think this picture really demonstrates the lie that a lot of men have been sold, which is when men say, I can have babies until I'm 80, they're thinking their eggs are going to, their wives' eggs are going to get fertilized, kind of like the young men's. Where this picture actually creeps me out, but this is, I guess, a man who has some very virulent sperm. You can see lots and lots of sperm have reached this egg. This egg is highly likely to get fertilized because a lot of sperm have managed to reach the egg, right? Lots of sperm are reaching the egg. And so this egg has a higher chance of high quality sperm fertilizing it. When we look at older men's sperm, you can see that there's fewer sperm there. You can see that they don't look as robust, right? And so this is why it is much more difficult, and we'll get into how much more difficult it is for older men to get even young women pregnant. So when older men are like, I'm going to go get a really young woman, somebody that's 20, 25 years younger than me so that I can up my chances of getting pregnant, actually, her age doesn't help you very much, right? Because her age is not the problem. Your sperm quality is the problem. And even with a young wife, we're going to be looking at some research that says it's significantly difficult for older men to get women pregnant. So we can't just look at the random, like I said, we're not going to look at the random 80-year-old that got somebody pregnant, okay? Like there are some women, as I said, who have given birth 67, 68, 69 years old. But as women, we're not going to be like, well, women are giving birth until they're 69 naturally without doctor's help. There are women who naturally have gotten pregnant in their late 60s. But women aren't running around here claiming that we can all get pregnant in our late 60s. In the same way, what one 60-year-old or 70-year-old or 80-year-old does is not common. We don't commonly see 80-year-old fathers, 60-year-old fathers, right? It's rare that we meet a man who's 56 years old and is just having his first child. That's not super common, especially without medical intervention. And there's a reason for that. Young women are better at making babies, but young men are also better at making babies. Older men are not like younger men. You guys aren't, you don't have virulent sperm the way you did when you were 25. And to hear what is peddled in these YouTube streets, you would think that they were coming to the table with a quality of sperm that is really top notch. And it's simply not the case. Men have to, be mindful of trying to reproduce during their reproductive years when their reproductive years are the best, just like women do, right? Oh, it's buffering and freezing? You guys can you said I'm buffering. Am I still freezing? Oh, let's see. Okay, how's that on the sound? Is the sound good now, or am I still buffering? Let me know in the chat. Is the sun good now? Is the sound good now, or am I still buffering? Phobos said there are a lot of healthy babies. There aren't a lot of men in their 60s having children. So there can't be a lot of healthy babies being born to men in their 60s. Let's not be ridiculous. Most people aren't having babies in their 60s, right? I mean, I could say that too. There are a lot of healthy women that also have given birth in their 60s. Those are facts. There are women who have given birth to healthy babies in their 60s. But I'm not going to be ridiculous and make that sound like it's normal. It's not normal, just like it's not normal for a man to have a child in his 60s. That's not going on all the time. Let's be intellectually honest, you guys. Right, exceptions don't make the rule. This is what I'm saying. Oh, it's still buffering? Wait, it's still buffering, you guys? Because the chat is behind me. Like your chat is moving slower. I don't want to move forward if you guys can't hear me. So are you guys able to hear me, or is it still buffering? Ronald, we know you're old and bitter and jealous of younger men. Now, you don't have to keep telling us. We know that you're old, bitter, and jealous of younger men. You shouldn't be a hater of younger men, Ronald. You should not be jealous of the young. So let's go forward. If everybody can hear me, I'm going to go forward. So when you reproduce with a older man, there are some risks. Number one, there is a lot of rejection of the baby. So when the father is older, there's a higher risk of pregnancy loss, miscarriages. The woman's body rejects the baby a lot of the time. So you might get the egg fertilized, but at some point, unfortunately for the mother, the woman's body sometimes rejects the baby and it causes miscarriage. Also, it increases the risk of rare birth defects. Rare birth defects. The older the father's ages, there's going to be this slight increase in the risk of certain rare birth defects, not just regular birth defects, but birth defects that we would not normally see. Skull development, development of the limbs of the baby, and also development of the baby's heart, right? Autism. There is actually a link between autism and older fathers. The older a father is, the higher the risk is for autism. And this autism we know affects boys more. In fact, something that the research that we're going to be looking at is going to show is that, let's take a look at the next study. Male fertility is an important contributor to the conception potential of a couple. I think that this is really important because the men are always talking about how it's really important to pick a fertile woman. In the same way, it's important for women to pick a fertile man. And so if you are a young woman, the least fertile man you're going to find is going to be a man that is aged. Male fertility is important in the couple's fertility. If you want children, then the fertility of your husband is going to make a difference. The evaluation of male fertility is based on the examination of sperm parameters and sperm functionality. Furthermore, epidemiological evidence suggests that there is a decline in semen quality, the amount of semen, the motility of semen, and the morphology of semen, meaning what it looks like, and male fertility associated with increased male age. In addition, advanced paternal age has been implicated in an increased frequency of miscarriages. Again, the woman's body rejects the fertilized egg and it causes a miscarriage. Also, a various amount of disorders that are dominant. Let's look at some of those. So there are autosomal disorders, autosomal dominant disorders, and I'm going to share with you what some of those are because some of these disorders are rather serious. You know, we know that a woman with older eggs can produce a child that has Down syndrome, but there are some very serious syndromes that can be caused by a father who has older sperm. So you have something called Marfan's syndrome. This is an excellent example. Marfan syndrome, 50% of the time when people have it, it is caused by a genetic condition, meaning it's passed down from a parent, often an older father. Marfan syndrome is a genetic condition that affects the connective tissue that supports a body's organs. It causes damage to the blood vessels, the heart, the skin, the lungs, the bones of the hips, the spine, the feet, and the rib cage. Those are some of the disorders that can be caused, some of the types of disorders that can be caused when a woman is impregnated by semen that is from an older man. If a man wants to produce healthy children, what is important is that he does so while he is young, right? If a man wants to produce healthy children, his best chance is to do it while he is young. If a woman wants healthy children, it is best that you choose a husband that is young. Male factor infertility is a term that encompasses a host of different conditions. And this time we're looking at a urology report called the Fertility and the Aging Male. This report came out in 2011, or this study came out in 2011. All of the links to everything that I put here are going to be in the description box. So it takes into account, this study actually takes into account the woman's age, which is why I wanted to use it. It takes into account, what if the woman is younger? How does that affect fertility? And this is what it found. I thought that this was really interesting. So let's talk about changes in sexual functioning in the aging man. Studies have consistently shown that increasing male age is associated with an increased time to pregnancy and decreased pregnancy rates. Studies have consistently shown that older men take longer to get a woman pregnant and have less of a chance of getting a woman pregnant. Now, the reason that this study is interesting is that they adjusted for female age. In this study, they considered if the man was trying to reproduce with a younger woman. And that is why I wanted to use this study, because one of the things that we hear from men is, in a way, they understand that they are going to have a harder time having children if they're older. So their solution is, what if I just get a younger woman, right? Let's look at this in particular. This study showed that after 6 cycles, men that were over the age of 35 years had a fertility rate decrease. Oh, they had a fertility rate of 25%, right? They had a fertility rate of 25% compared with the fertility rates of men who were younger than 35 years, who had fertility rates of 52%. Let me repeat that. Men who were over the age of 35 had fertility rates of 25%. This is adjusted for the woman's age, right? This is considering whether or not these men had young wives or older wives. Their fertility rates were 25%. The age of the wife was considered. And even with that in question, their fertility rates were only 25% after the age of 35. Apparently, the wall for male fertility is 35 years old. This is in comparison with fertility rates of 52% in men that were under 35 years old, meaning under 35 years old, men had twice the rate of fertility. After 35 years old, their fertility declined by like 50%. And we know from the study that I looked at earlier that every year after that, their fertility declines another 1.5%. So at 36, their fertility would be at 24.5%. At 37, their fertility would be at, right? I'm sorry, at 24.5%. At 37, their fertility would be at 22.5%. Or 22%, and so on and so forth. So if their fertility is at 25% after the age of 35, and we know that every year their fertility declines by 1.5% without changing, then you know that by the time that they're 60 or 70 or 50, right, that their fertility is extremely low. And this is why they saw that even when they adjusted for the age of the wife, even when their partner was very young, these men had a hard time creating children. It took them longer, right? It took them several months longer to create children, and the ability for them to get a woman pregnant was greatly stunted. So just like women have to think about the quality of their eggs, you hear men talking about women's old eggs, men have to be concerned about the quality of their sperm, right? This is just a reality. This idea that men are immune right? Men are completely immune from degraded fertility, and that men just are capable of producing like a rock star until they're 80 is a complete myth. It's not true. There's a 50% decline in fertility after the age of 35, and it goes down by 1.5% every single year after that. Let's look at this next study. Advanced paternal age, infertility, and reproductive risks. So we've already established that on the whole, men have less sperm, lower quality sperm, more deformed sperm when they try to produce at an advanced age. We've also established that after the age of 35, men's fertility goes down by 50% and that it declines about 1.5% every year following that, meaning that by the time a man reaches 50 years old, his fertility is actually quite low and it's difficult for him to get a woman pregnant. Is it possible? Sure. Is it difficult? Yes. Is his sperm quality bad? Yes. Like I said, there are women who have been 69 years old and given birth, 67 years old and given birth. But most women are not going to claim that our fertility is amazing at 69 because we know it's not true. In the same way, just because some random old dude, right, is able to give birth to a child at 80 years old does not mean that it is wise for men to think that that's going to be their story. Look, the reality here, you guys, is that younger people are more fertile, both men and women, and younger people have healthier babies. It just is what it is. Only a fool is going to wait until he's in his 50s to produce a child. Men are most fertile before the age of 35. In fact, it seems like the fertility window for men is about 10 years different than the fertility window for women, right? Women are most fertile in their mid 20s. After that, their fertility declines. Around 35, women start to peak, right? And then their fertility starts to take a drastic drop around the age 40. Men's fertility declines around age 35. And by the time that they reach 40, 45, their fertility wanes in the same way that women's does. There's only about a 10-year difference between us. Older men, you guys are rocking, an infertility thing too, just like the women are. You guys are not like the young men. The younger men are way more fertile. Let's go ahead and let's look at this next study. I want to get to some of what they talk about. So let's talk about advanced paternal age, infertility, and miscarriage. We're going to go through a few things. What I like about this study is it broke it down really well, and it references several other studies. So several studies have shown that that natural fertility rates decline with paternal age. Yet another source is telling us several studies have shown that natural fertility rates decline with paternal age. A survey of 8,559 pregnancies, right, found that conception during a 12-month period was 30% less likely for men over 40 years compared with men younger than 30 years. In a survey of 1,976 women that controlled for maternal age, this is another study that they actually looked at how old the wife was. It showed that 76.8% of young men younger than 25 years impregnated their female partners within 6 months. Men that were younger than 25 years got their wives pregnant within 6 months, compared with only 50% of APA men that were older than 45 years. Again, decreased ability to get a woman pregnant. Some studies have linked APA to increased rates of miscarriage. A prospective study of 5,121 natural conceptions found that partners of men older than 35 years were 1.26 times more likely to miscarry than partners of men younger than 35 years. And this is after they controlled for maternal age. All of these studies took into consideration, even if the man had a younger spouse, he was more likely to create a pregnancy that ended in a miscarriage. Men older than 35 years had miscarriage rates of 32.4% compared with only 13.7% in men younger than 35 years. Miscarriage rates of 32.4% compared with 13%. After the age of 35, the risk of miscarriage is just going to be higher. The eggs that are fertilized are simply less viable when the father is older. So if an older man and a younger woman, or an older man and a woman his age, are having difficulty conceiving, it is often because not that the eggs are not getting fertilized, but that the fertilized eggs are not viable, and so the woman's body will discard it. It seems that women's bodies automatically discard, right, the offspring of older men to the tune of like 30 something percent, 32.4%. Yes, drug use, definitely, Mika. Drug use can reduce it as well. So the question is, why does this happen? It says one explanation is that increasing paternal age negatively affects sperm quality. The older a man gets, it just has a negative effect. Age just has a negative effect on a man's quality of sperm. It just is what it is. And I really think like a lot of men get offended by this, but there's nothing to be offended by. The reality is, men, you guys age. Just like women age, men age. Just like women's reproductive years, their golden reproductive years are limited, men's golden reproductive years are limited. This is just reality. And I think it's important that these young men not listen to these older men, because the studies show that you have the best chance of having a healthy baby and a successful pregnancy with your wife when you are young. Do not listen to these old men try to take you off the market for women your own age. Find a woman your own age, you young men, and you guys have babies. Get married and have babies. That's what these studies are saying. Do not think that you're going to wait into your 50s. And for men who have waited until their 50s, until their 40s, right, until over the age of 35 to have children, just be aware that it's going to negatively affect you, because age negatively affects sperm quality. How does it negatively affect sperm quality? There's a decline in semen volume. There's a decline in how much semen you have. You have less semen. There's a decline in total sperm count. So you have less semen and your sperm counts get low. There's a decline in motility, meaning your sperm's ability to swim fast to get to that egg. The sperm gets slower the older you get. There's a percentage of morphologically normal sperm that is decreased, meaning the way that your sperm are designed, often they come out deformed. You have a lot of deformed sperm, and deformed sperm have a hard time getting to the egg. And there's an increase in DNA fragmentation rates, meaning the stuff that your baby is going to be made of becomes more fragmented. And that's where a lot of these genetic problems that children often have or can have when a father is of advanced age, that's where it comes in. In fact, if you want a healthy child, then you should have a child while you're young. That goes for men and women. The younger a man is, the more likely he's going to produce a healthy child. That's just the reality. In the same way that women take a risk having a baby when they're older, that something could go wrong, men take a risk having a baby when they are older, that something can go wrong and that problem will be caused by their sperm because of their advanced age. Let's go on and take a look at something else. Advanced paternal age, APA means advanced paternal age, you guys, was associated with poor embryo quality. Somebody in the chat I noticed asked me earlier, Irene, what do you mean by the quality of the offspring? What I mean is that advanced paternal age is associated with poor embryo quality, meaning that there is a reduction of fertilization and implantation rates. Even if the egg gets fertilized, the woman's body will not allow that embryo to implant in her uterus. It will reject the embryo, which leads to a very early miscarriage. Now, I think if you are a young woman and an older man, right, a man in his 40s, 50s, 60s is trying to woo you because he wants a baby because he's never had one, you should know that you run the risk of getting a miscarriage. And you need to ask yourself, do I want to be with somebody that is, 15, 20, 12, 25 years older than me and go through the trauma of miscarriage? Because miscarriage is a very real possibility when you are impregnated by an older man. That is something that has been found to occur. There's also a reduction in pregnancy and live birth rates. Advanced paternal age causes a reduction in the chances of pregnancy and in the chances that you're going to give birth to a child that is living, right? Now, this is for natural conception, but what if you go have a doctor's help? What if you go get IVF? It says advanced paternal age has also been associated with increased miscarriage rates among pregnancies conceived with IVF and ICSI, meaning even when you go in for professional help, even when you go in and get IVF or infertility treatments under the supervision of a doctor, there is still a chance of miscarriage, an increased chance of miscarriage if the father is older, right? Let's go look at something else, advanced paternal age and genetic risks, right? So I'm not going to read why the spermazoa, although this is a very interesting read, you guys. It talks about the way that sperm is created inside of a man's body, inside of the gonads. It talks about the production of sperm and how that process gets corrupted after so many years of life, right? So here's the thing. Actually, let's go ahead and read it because it explains to us why men's sperm quality goes down. Male germ cells undergo approximately 30 meiotic divisions during embryogenesis spermogeny, before spermogenesis during puberty. Spermatozoa undergo a meiotic division once every 16 days. This is how often men make sperm. And this process continues throughout a man's lifespan. So every 16 days, a man's spermatozoa start to have that meiotic division, right? At age 20, those cells have undergone approximately 150 cell divisions. By age 50, here we are, by age 50, these germ cells have passed through more than 800 cell divisions. As a result of more meiotic replications, the adult man's germ cells are at an increased risk for DNA fragmentation and higher frequency of point mutations. Because men's gonads, by the time they reach 50, have had about 800 cell divisions, it increases. It's like using a copy machine, right? It's like running out of ink on a copy machine. Let's think about it that way. There's only so much ink in the cartridge, right? There's only so much ink in the cartridge. The more copies you run, the less ink you have, the poorer the quality of the copy. The poorer the quality of the copy. And so, I mean, that's just, it's not exactly like that, but that kind of paints a picture. So that's essentially what happens to men's sperm is that after 800 cell divisions, by the time the man reaches the age 50, the DNA is not perfect anymore. The DNA starts to fragment. The DNA is the genetic material that is going to produce the next generation, that child. Can you imagine fertilizing an egg with fragmented DNA? Because that's what happens, right? You end up fertilizing an egg, or you have a higher chance of fertilizing a woman's egg with fragmented DNA, which is why telling men that they have reproductive years that are never ending is very dangerous because men do have a reproductive window, just like women do. Men do have a decline in the efficiency of their fertility. They don't have this wide window where they can just have babies and just make great kids and just easily get people pregnant for their whole lives. It's simply a lie. That's not what the research shows. The research shows that your DNA starts to fragment, that your sperm quality goes down, that you have a lot of mutations. Your sperm start having two heads and two tails and bumpy heads, right? They start to look weird. They start to swim slow. Maybe they can't swim at all, right? And that when they do make it to the egg, there's this risk that the DNA that's going to fertilize that egg, the sperm head that carries that DNA, that it's fragmented, which leads to birth defects, right? And actually, this is a really interesting read. I'm going to attach all of these, you guys. This was so interesting when I was reading it. I found all of this so interesting. So, there are a lot of genetic conditions that are caused, but something that I wanted to go into were X-linked diseases. I thought that this was really interesting and actually a little concerning, especially if a man wants to have sons, right? Or if a man wants to have healthy daughters. X-linked diseases. Y'all, when we talk about hermaphrodites and things like that, when we talk about people who have like XXY chromosomes, when their chromosomes are abnormal, That is caused by men's old sperm. I was so blown away, you guys. I was literally on the floor when I found this out. That some of these disorders of like some of these sex disorders, like when people are born with too many X chromosomes, this is caused oftentimes because the father was of advanced paternal age. The father was older. And so a child might be born with more than one X chromosome, like an additional one. It'd be like XXY or something like that, right? Let me show you guys. I'm about to I'm a I can't stand B. B said, "How can I rest in my femininity with an unhealthy baby and a husband who will pass when the child is young? I can't do it. I'm not gonna do it with you guys. I'm not about to do it with y'all today. I'm trying to approach the situation with sympathy because I'm telling you guys, I could do like the men do. You know how they say her old funky eggs, you know what I mean? Her worn out womb. I could do that. I could do that to men. I could go in and I could start talking trash about their deformed sperm, right? Their compromised DNA. I could do all that. I'm not going to do that though, because I think the research speaks for itself. But I'm just saying, it's not good to throw stones when you're in a glass house. It's not good for you to be out here with poor quality sperm that can't swim straight and can cause all manner of genetic mutations and birth defects and sperm that a woman's body is going to reject and then talk about some woman's scrambled eggs. It's like, look, your sperm is scrambled. My eggs are scrambled, your sperm is scrambled. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is why this kind of gender attack doesn't make sense. Because when you're old, you're old. Men don't escape the wall, okay? Men don't escape the wall. They tend to think that they don't hit the wall. Look, y'all are hitting the wall too. The wall is an equal opportunity barrier. Okay, the wall is not just made for women. Apparently, the wall is made for you guys too. And you're smacking into it too. Now, you might smack into it 5 years after me, but you're going to hit it. You're going to be right there with me. We might as well hold hands. Okay. Right. That's what they brag about. But you know what? It's because they don't understand the science behind it. Now, these spontaneous germline mutations and X-linked diseases, you guys, that freaked me out. There is evidence, listen to this, you guys. There is evidence that the offspring of women who were born to older fathers have an increased risk of X-linked disorders, such as hemophilia. I thought that this was interesting. Let's take a look at it. I thought this was very interesting. Hemophilia is unprovoked spontaneous bleeding episodes. That freaked me out. That literally freaked me out. And then there's like muscular dystrophy. You guys, muscular dystrophy is caused by having a child, can be caused by having a child with an older man. Hunter syndrome. I mean, the list goes on and on. All of these X-linked diseases, they don't even know how it happens. They don't know why sperm from older men causes these disorders, but it does, which is kind of scary. I think that, fertility and health of babies has always focused so much on the mother. And now that the research is starting to look at the father, they are seeing that a lot of things that they attributed to something going wrong inside of the mother are actually caused by the genetic contribution of the fathers. and that the risk of a negative genetic contribution from a father is caused by advanced age, right? It increases, I should say, with advanced age. I just thought that this was so interesting. Let's look at other adverse reproductive outcomes associated with advanced paternal age. Y'all, this broke my heart. Childhood cancer. Several studies have shown an association between advanced paternal age and various childhood cancers such as leukemia, Hodgkin's lymphoma, and pediatric central nervous system tumors and breast cancer. I cannot believe this. These men are promoting that men wait until they're 40 and 50 to have children, even though it's irresponsible. It's irresponsible to just try to start making babies at that age when it increases the risk that your child can have cancer. That is so unfortunate. Kenya said, yes, Irene, I noticed they've only recently started focusing on male sperm. It's profound research and medical breakthroughs. Yes. I mean, obviously, now that we're looking at men's sperm and not just what women's bodies are doing, we can look into what might be causing a lot of these genetic abnormalities and apparently, a lot of these cancers, right, that we're seeing in our children because both parents make a genetic contribution. And the reality is, a younger man is going to produce a healthier child. It just is what it is. Just like a younger woman is going to produce a healthier child. The likelihood of it, right? Now, that does that mean that an older man can't produce a healthy child? Absolutely not. Does that mean that an older woman can't produce a healthy child? Absolutely not, right? But the chances of it are significantly lower. And for men to honestly be out here perpetuating or thinking because they haven't actually looked at the research that I can just wait until I'm 40 or 50 and I'm going to get myself a healthy baby, it's like, no, sir, that's not how this is going to work out for you, right? Something else outside of childhood cancer, congenital abnormalities or congenital anomalies, I should say. Advanced paternal age may also be a risk factor for chromosomal birth defects, non-chromosomal birth defects. It look at this. Now, remember how older eggs can cause Down syndrome? Advanced paternal age is associated with increased odds of cleft lip, a hernia of the diaphragm, a right ventricular outflow tract obstruction. The list goes on and on. And every year and the risk increases by 1% for every year of increase in paternal age. For every year that a man is over 35, right? The increase of these things occurring go up by 1%. This is very similar to the study that we read earlier, right? This is very similar to the study that we read earlier. This the research is I'm sorry. This research went on from this particular research on this study about congenital anomalies went on from 1997 to 2004, right? This study went on from 1992 to 2009. This study is from 2011. I mean, they've been studying it since the 90s. It's 2021 now. They've been studying this since the 90s. This cumulative report was put out in 2017. I mean, we're not going to say that the research isn't where, the research still we're going to find more. But we're not going to discount. I'm speaking to you, Patchy. We're not going to discount the research if they've been looking deeply into this since the 90s. And some of this research went back as far as the 50s, right? And so here we are. When was this cumulative paper published? This paper, where they compound the research, was published in 2018. And it was a compilation of research that spans, you know, several decades. So I would say that it's safe to say that these scientists and doctors know what they're talking about. I just think that it's important that we understand that there are in these YouTube streets, right? In these YouTube streets, y'all, I have so much research. Look, we can't even go through it all. We can't go through this all. We can't. Look at this. Older fathers are associated with increased birth risk. This is from Stanford Medicine. They looked at over 40 million births. Stanford Medicine looked at over 40 million births. And they found the same thing. When was this published? October 31st, 2018. Stanford Medicine found the same thing. They looked at 40 million births, you guys. This is not a small, this is the biggest data set ever done. I wanted to include this because this is the largest research study ever done on the planet. They looked at 40 million births. I should have probably started with this one, right? They looked at 40 million births. And guess what they found? Right? What did they found? What did they find? They found that after 35, a man hits the wall. That's what they found. They found the wall for male fertility was 35 years old. If the wall for female fertility is 25 years old, which is what I hear on YouTube, then the wall for male fertility is 35, according to Stanford, that studied 40 million births, right? So let's take a look at it. Let's take a look at what was found. So these researchers organized the information based on the father's age: younger than 25, 25 to 34, 35 to 44, and 45 to 55, and then older than 55. And then they controlled for a variety of parameters that might skew the association between the father's ages and birth outcomes. They considered race, education level, marital status, and smoking history. And they also considered the age of the mother. This was a very thorough study. It was 40 million births, right? They looked at 40 million children, 40 million pregnancies, and they controlled for age, race, smoking, education, the mother's age, the medical history. They accounted for all of that because they wanted an accurate study. The data suggests that once dad hits age 35, there's an increase in birth risks overall. With every year that a man ages, he accumulates on average 2 new genetic mutations of the DNA of his sperm. Let me repeat that. 35 is the wall. Men hit the wall at 35. Right? Your wall is 35. When we talk about hitting the wall, it's 35 years old for men. Every single year, men over 35 get 2 new genetic mutations to their sperm. 2 new genetic mutations per year. But birth risks for infants born to fathers of the subsequent age tier showed sharper increases. Infants born to men 45 or older were 14% more likely to be admitted to the NICU, 14% more likely to be born premature, 18% more likely to have seizures, 14% more likely to have a low birth rate. If the father was 50 or older, the likelihood that their infant would need ventilation upon birth increased by 10%. The odds that they would need assistance from the neonatal intensive care unit increased by 28%. It increased by 28% that your baby would end up in the NICU. This is some food for thought. And I mean, I can't even go through, you guys know I did a lot of research. Older fathers put health of partners and unborn children at risk. Listen to this. Older fathers put health of partners and unborn children at risk. Older fathers put health of partners and unborn children at risk. Men who delay fatherhood should consult their doctor and consider banking sperm before age 35. Y'all, this might become my thumbnail. Let me screenshot it now. This thumbnail is going to go over those two sperm pictures. I told you the wall for men is age 35. They've always been talking about the wall, the wall, the wall, the wall. Look, we both hit the wall. You're out here telling women they're no good for anything after 25. Well, you guys are just 10 years behind us. Let the data tell it, right? So let's go forward. Men who delay starting a family have a ticking biological clock, just like women. They are hecka funny. I'm sorry. I feel like why are they playing today? Men who delay starting a family have a ticking biological clock, just like women, that may affect the health of their partners and children, according to Rutgers researchers. You guys, I am on the floor. I think this is the messiest. Okay, let me be serious because I know that this is a serious, I know that they're being serious, but it's just their wording has got me like dead over here because, wait a second, hold on. It's not funny. I'm just saying, I guess I'm giggling because this is like often what is thrown at women. And it's just this idea that, especially on YouTube, so many men act like this is not something that has anything to do with them. But you know how they say your biological clock is ticking? Well, apparently the scientists say that your biological clock is ticking too after 35. This is what I'm saying. Rhetoric is one thing and then science is another, right? Rhetoric is one thing and then science is another. The study, which reviewed 40 years of research on the effect of paternal age on fertility, pregnancy, and the health of children, was, well, it was published by the Journal of Maturis. While it is widely accepted, look at this, y'all, they busted it all out. While it is widely accepted that physiological changes that occur in women after 35 can affect conception, pregnancy, and the health of a child, most men do not realize their advanced age can have a similar impact. This sounds like every man on YouTube. While it is widely accepted that the physiological changes that occur in women after 35 can affect conception, pregnancy, and the health of a child, most men do not realize their advanced age can have a similar impact. The study found that men 45 and older can experience decreased fertility and put their partners at risk for increased pregnancy complications such as gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, and preterm birth. So now the effects just aren't on the baby. The mom might get sick. The mom might get gestational diabetes while she's pregnant. The mom might get preeclampsia. Infants born to older fathers were found to be at higher risk for premature birth, late stillbirth, low APGAR scores, low birth rate, and a higher incidence of newborn seizures and birth defects, such as congenital heart disease and cleft palate. As they matured, and this is why I said they produced lower quality children, as they matured, these children were found to have an increased likelihood of childhood cancers, psychiatric and cognitive disorders. Remember schizophrenia? Remember we talked earlier in my rapid fire that older sperm can cause schizophrenia in children? Psychiatric and cognitive disorders and autism. All of that stuff. Y'all, I can't even go through all of these studies that I have. This makes me wish I would have done approached this differently because it's too much. It's too much. I pulled up so much research. Yes, all the links are going to be in the description box. Hold on. Let me stop my share. I can't go through all of the research that I saved for this. I really can. I wish I could, but it's just too much. It's too much research. I can't go through it all. Look, the Stanford study, though, had me on the floor. The Stanford study, and when I tell you I'm taking my thumbnail from this study, men who delay starting a family have a ticking biological clock just like women. I think that is going to be the sentence for this entire live. Men have a biological clock and it's ticking, okay? And at the end of the day, men who are over the age of 35 have lower quality sperm. And that is the moral of the story. Look, that's the whole moral of the story. Men don't have an indefinite window. You guys don't have super sperm. All of these channels out here. And honestly, I'm telling you, younger men, these older men are just trying to get you out of the market. There's some creepy, this should have been Dirty Old Men Part 3, because there are some creepy older men who are trying to have sex with girls that are younger, or young women who are young enough to be their daughters. And they're trying to tell the young men not to reproduce because they don't want to compete with the younger men. These old men don't want to compete with the younger men. So they're telling you to not make babies with women that are your own age. When the reality is, you know what? Give them that work, young guys. I'm going to need my young 20s, 30s men to get out there and go get your women in your 20s and your 30s and give these old men with the backward sperm a run for their money. Don't let them convince you to stay off the market so that they can get into relationships with people that could be their children. Make them compete. They're always saying, make these old women compete. Make these old men compete. Take your healthy, high quality sperm and go be fruitful and multiply. That is what I say to the young men. Do not let these old dudes, do not let these old men convince you to save up all of your high quality sperm so that they can spread their little slow moving mutated sperm far and wide. Absolutely not. Okay? Absolutely not. Do not let them convince you. They act like they're your allies. Isn't that cute how they act like they're your allies? They act like they're your allies, but in reality, they're just trying to get you off the market. They're trying to get you to waste your best reproductive years by taking their bad advice. They keep telling you we get better as we get older. Well, science says they don't get better as they get older. Science says that you are better while you are younger. Do not listen to them telling you to waste your youth. You young men need to stop listening to these old, bitter dudes. They're old, they don't have kids, they don't have families. They're trying to tell you to waste your life away. They're telling you to use up your good years so that you can be old and wasted away like them. Absolutely not. Tell them if they want to come for women your age, they're going to have to compete with the big boys, okay? They're going to have to compete with those young, virulent, fertile men with healthy sperm. And they don't want to compete with the young men because they know they're not going to get chosen. You're not about to get chosen over a young, healthy man. Nobody's going to pick used up grandpa over a young, healthy man. And they know it. But in case they didn't know it, the studies show that younger men make better fathers genetically. Younger men make better fathers. So if you are a young woman and you want children, your best bet is to date a man within 10 years of your age. Look at that. Your best bet is to pick a man who is in his 20s or 30s, because at the age of 35, their fertility greatly decreases. And after the age of 40, you might as well just hang up your hat because you're putting yourself at risk and your baby at risk. You need fresh sperm for those fresh eggs, right? You need fresh sperm for those fresh eggs, young ladies. Don't let these old dudes try to convince you that their genetically inferior sperm is a good match for your eggs, okay? Because it's simply not true. So, with that said, I hope that this was informative. I really like the title, The Sperm of Man, but when I tell you right now that that is about to be my thumbnail, I kid you not, I'm about to change this thumbnail right now. Okay, this thumbnail is changing immediately because that sentence must be out in the ether. So, with that said, I'm going to get out of here. Patchy where it said oops babies. Look, if you are old, if you're an old man in your 40s and 50s and 60s and you're still having oops babies, then you're not very mature, okay? Oops is not something you should hear very often out of a grown person. All right? At 40, 50, 60 years old, we shouldn't be saying oops, I made a human being. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. So with that said, I'm going to get out of here. And I will talk to you guys later. And I think this is a great comment. Older men cannot compete with the young. That is a biological fact. This is facts. The only option they have is to flaunt the size of their wallet. And these are facts. And they know that they are facts. You guys might as well just admit that you are scared of these young dudes. Just admit that you're scared of them. You're scared of them and you're trying to convince them to not be on the market. But the young dudes know now, they know about your degraded sperm now, y'all. You can't be telling them you guys are equals anymore because you guys try to pander like you and young men are exactly the same. You just have more money. And it's like, y'all are not the same. Okay. You guys are not the same. You guys are very different. And so now the truth is out here in the ether. These young men can stop feeling some kind of way because you've made them think that they're substandard because you have a little more change in your pocket. The reality is they are winning out here. That is what the science says, not Irene. So with that said, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye, y'all.